Multi-strand designs can be tricky, and today I'm going to give you some tips for making it easier. So take a look at this necklace, and you can see that I have 3 strands of wire that are passing through the large bead, and then a single bead on each strand, and then through the large bead and spacers again. Now this is a really versatile pattern that you can use, and there are some ways that we can make it even less complicated to create. So with the stoppers, you can use these to hold your beads in place on the wire, and they come in different sizes. The larger style is great for beading wire, and the smaller style works really well for thread when you're working with seed beads especially. For a design like this, you build it out from the center. So once you know that the established length when you're finished, I wanted this to be a shorter length of necklace, so I started in the center so that my bead is perfectly centered in the middle. You don't want to end up with a gap in the design right in the center. So to hold these in place while I'm working, I'm just going to open my stopper, but to do that you squeeze kind of these loops on the end together, and that opens the spring, and you just place it over the wire. So this way I'll be able to maintain these right in the center as I work. Now I'm just going to add 1 bead to each wire, and the way that you decide what type of beads to use, besides personal preference, it's also a little bit about sizing. So I chose these larger beads first. Then I chose the smaller beads to kind of fill in and maintain that spacing that I wanted the overall effect to have. So you can see I have 1 bead on each wire. Now if for some reason I wanted to leave my work, I would clip a stopper onto each wire to prevent those beads from sliding off before I get back. You never want to lose your pattern once you've worked so hard to establish it. So to continue working, now you're just going to pass the wires through a spacer, and then through another large bead. And again, I'm holding these together and passing them through. Then we'd be ready for the individual strands. And see how there's a little bit of space here? Now if you wanted to maintain an even more distance, you could clip your clip here onto the wires to hold them in place. If you wanted that to be permanent for the design, then you would need to crimp here. But just for maintaining spacing while you work, you could do that. In this case, I want them to be closer together, so I'm just going to slide them all the way down. And then I would add an individual bead to each individual strand and repeat that pattern. On this piece, you can see what the pattern has developed. So this is the center bead held in place with the stopper, and then repeating pattern here along the length of the wire. So now I'm ready to attach a clasp to this end. The way that I'm going to do the clasp is to hold these in place again with the stopper, and that's just in case I have any trouble crimping. These are going to hold it in place for me while I work. So I place my stopper on the wire, then pass it through the crimp, and then I'm going to pass through half of the clasp and back into the crimp. So in this case I'm using the extension chain end. And extension chains are nice for multiple strand designs when they're short like this because it gives you a little more versatility for your neckline. Pass the wires back through the crimp. Make sure you catch all 3 as you're passing them through, and that's another reason why it's helpful to have a stopper on there. In case you do drop a strand, you won't lose any of your beads. So once my crimp is on, I can remove that stopper and pull it down. I'm just going to adjust it by manipulating the wire. Now if you want it to be flush against your last bead, it's always best to move the crimp, not pulling on the wires, because you don't want to cause any kinking there. So now I pull my wire ends through, and then I'll use the crimping tool. So for crimping, you always do the outer jaws first to create an oval shape, then the inner jaws to make your crease, and then come back with the outer jaws to round it off. Now you can make this look even more professional by trimming the ends and adding a crimp cover, which is a C-shaped bead. And you just place it right over the crimp like that and close it using your large crimping tool. So you can see that gives it a really nice finish. And I would just trim these ends off. And you would repeat that technique on the other end of the necklace. Now let me show you some of the other necklaces that I brought. These are more examples of using the same type of pattern, and you can see they're the exact same idea, and they're passing through a large bead, and then each individual wire is passing through a smaller bead. And one really great thing about this type of pattern is that you can do it so many different ways. You can see these are 4 very, very different looks, just depending on the beads that you use. And the beading wire also becomes a part of the design. So where I have the metallic finish wire, I've coordinated it with the metallic beads. Where I have colorful wire, I even used the crinkly wire with the colorful beads on the last design, and that's just to add a little bit more texture. So it's just one more way to make multiple strand designs a bit easier to create.